evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Larry McDonough. I'm a volunteer with the Advocates for Human Rights. I'll be playing some music for you while you wait for the Human Rights Awards dinner to begin. Please enjoy. I'm going to do the music of Bill Evans from the early 1960s.
Oh my gosh, it's Monday. It's the Advocates Awards dinner. I have to get ready. I can't be late. Where is everybody? I can't be late. The awards dinner is happening tonight. Maybe I've got the wrong day. Where is everybody? Silent auction should be in full swing. I should have a cocktail. We should be mingling. start without me. Don't start without me.
Bonsoir de Rabat. I'm Stephanie Willman-Bordad from MRA Mobilizing for Rights Associates in Morocco.
Yoyan again Badada from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I am Negesa Odo Dube from United Oromo Voices.
Bună ziua din Republica Moldova. Hi from Republic of Moldova. I am Veronica, coordinator of a national coalition live without violence.
Namaste, I am Mira Rana, Director of Educate the Children Nepal.
Muy buenas noches. Good evening from Puerto Rico. I am Kevin Miguel Rivera, President of the World Coalition Against Death Penalty.
Cameroon Chadezino! I am Joaquin from Alternative Cameroon.
Good evening from Nepal. I am Anupal from Santi Pagodi Community School.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat mula sa Pilipinas. I am Karen Gomez-Tumpit of the Commission on Human Rights.
Good evening from Russia. I'm Olga Baranova from the Moscow Community Center for LGBT Initiatives.
Namaste और सलाम इंडिया से Antista Settlement with Citizens for Justice and Peace.
مساء النور من الرباط. I'm Saida Kuzi from Mobilizing for Rights Associate.
We partnered with Advocates for Human Rights for Universal Credit Review, and I was part of the team that traveled to Geneva.
The Advocates' dynamic and assertive participation at the Steering Committee and Executive Board has been an important asset to the goals of abolishing the death penalty worldwide. Muchas gracias to the Advocates.
We are working with Advocates for Human Rights for almost a decade now.
We work with the advocates on different projects about women's human rights.
We work with Advocates for Human Rights on a variety of issues, including the rule of law, responsive governments to international mechanisms, and minority rights.
We are a proud partner of the Advocates for Human Rights in its pro bono work helping civil society promote human rights in the country.
Enjoy the program.
Enjoy the program.
Enjoy the program and wishing you all.
Enjoy the program.
Enjoy the program.
Enjoy the program.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for joining us. Subharatri.
Thank you for joining us.
And support this amazing and dedicated team.
Are we excited about being part of this annual dinner tonight? You betcha!
Hello, and welcome to the first virtual awards dinner for the Advocates for Human Rights. I'm Jim O'Neill, chair of the board of the Advocates. I hope that, like me, those of you who are regulars at the live awards dinner find it inspiring refreshment for the soul. Once a year, we gather with friends of good heart and goodwill to celebrate the successes and achievements of this wonderful organization, which is dedicated to the proposition that all human beings everywhere are entitled, as of legal right, to life, freedom, dignity, and the chance for a good life. The annual silent auctions, conversations over cocktails and dinner, recognition of volunteer achievements, the chance to contribute during the Fund the Need program, and the keynote remarks from global leaders in the cause of human rights always leave me feeling that in this troubled and unjust world, there are potent and effective agents of hope. Never in the last 50 years has that hope been more necessary than now. A year ago, no one could have foreseen that we would be doing this year's dinner virtually in the midst of a pandemic and after a shocking murder by police that has made Minneapolis the center of nationwide outbreaks of protests and disorder. The human rights implications of both these tragedies make our work at the Advocates more critical and more challenging than ever. Many nonprofit organizations are facing existential challenges as a result of the pandemic and the economic downturn that followed. At the Advocates, however, we know that our supporters have never let us down, and they never will. For the next hour, we will enjoy all the elements that make the annual awards dinner so special. You'll just have to supply the cocktails and dinner yourselves. If you are new to our organization, I hope the descriptions of our work will help you to understand what a precious gem is among us in the form of the Advocates for Human Rights. And we at the Advocates know that you and all those who believe in us and in the cause of human rights will be there at our side in these difficult days.
Institutional racism is embedded into so many systems of power in the United States and throughout the world.
And we know that there are huge racial disparities in Minnesota's justice system when it comes to race.
International human rights standards let us refocus that system on human dignity.
George Floyd's case is a stark example of that.
One of the examples that we have in our work is the Minnesota Protocol. Investigating extrajudicial killings is something that has been part of our work. And there are standards, there are things we can do that really build community trust.
And when I look out there today and I see the protesters marching, bringing forth their voices for George Floyd, who no longer can bring forth his voice, it's incredibly powerful. And that's what is so remarkable about our community. Whether they're out there in the thousands, marching in the streets, speaking his name, speaking his last words, it's incredibly powerful because everyone has come together to unify on the protection of someone's basic human right to life.
Hello, volunteers and friends of the Advocates. Thank you for joining us. Our Human Rights Awards dinner is always one of the highlights of our year. I am grateful that technology allows for us to come together virtually when we can't be together in person. More importantly, I am grateful for you and all of the ways you support and inspire us. I need to start by acknowledging the pain and trauma in our community. The murder of George Floyd has galvanized our community to end police killings of Black people once and for all. Discrimination, racism, and extrajudicial execution all violate the core principles of human rights. We know racism impacts community of color in different ways, including its intersecting impact on immigrants, women, the LGBT community, and minority religions. COVID-19 has also starkly illuminated deep disparities resulting from systemic racism. We know things can't go back to the way they were. We need changes in laws, policies, practices, and hearts and minds. As an organization, we condemn racism in all its forms. We promote public policies that are grounded in human dignity and respect for life. It will take all of us working together to find the best solutions. We commit to not look away. When the headlines fade, the hard work will continue. We commit to work with our community partners. We commit to use whatever access and whatever privilege we have to support concrete actions to change laws, policies, and public opinion to eliminate institutional racism. As Don Fraser, one of our founders, said, human rights should be the organizing principle for the planet. At the Advocates, we mobilize hundreds of volunteers every year to represent and protect victims of human rights abuses. And we work to change the systems that allow those human rights abuses to occur in the first place. This year, thanks to your generous support, I am happy to say that we served a record number of clients. We deepened our reach and impact with our many partner organizations, both here and overseas. We engaged more volunteers around the world, and we expanded court monitoring in both state and immigration courts. We are deeply concerned about proposed regulations published today that would essentially eliminate asylum protections in the United States. We know that closing the door to asylum opens the door to tyranny, and we ask you to take action with us in fighting against these new rules. Despite inhumane immigration enforcement, we continue to see life-changing individual victories. For example, reuniting families after a grant of asylum has long been one of the most rewarding parts of our work. Recently, Araceli, our client who fled an abusive husband in Guatemala, was reunited with her children after a 7-year battle for asylum. With the help of a team of lawyers and our partner, Hello Abuela, Araceli and her children are together again. We also celebrate a slight bend towards justice in the moral arc of the universe. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a landmark decision recognizing the protection of LGBT individuals from discrimination in employment. We continue to be hopeful because we know the good in the world far outweighs the bad. In the face of the many challenges to human rights today, we are encouraged by the outpouring of volunteers dedicated to solving these problems. Together, we envision a world where every human being lives with dignity, justice, and equality, regardless of who they are, who they love, how they worship, or the color of their skin. This vision guides everything we do. Thank you for your ongoing support.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Garnett McKenzie, Deputy Director of the Advocates for Human Rights. No doubt about it, Sarah Musgrave is an advocate for human rights. I first met Sarah at our Minnesota State Fair booth. Every summer, she's there to spin the quiz wheel, engage fairgoers, and help us close things out on Labor Day. And let me tell you, her dry wit is second to none. But that annual volunteer gig turned into a year-round commitment when Sarah stepped up to help at our front desk. Every Wednesday and Thursday morning, Sarah's at the desk, or throughout our COVID lockdown, checking the voicemail. She's there to greet our clients and make everyone feel welcome when they're in our office. Sarah is also deeply engaged in our community, and she brings those connections to bear as she deftly and compassionately helps callers find the resources they need. While at the front desk, Sarah handles countless projects. She has taken on communicating directly with UN staff to make sure our UN deadline database is reliable and up to date for advocates around the world to use. Thank you, Sarah, for being an advocate for human rights, and congratulations.
I'm Jennifer Prestel, Deputy Director at the Advocates for Human Rights. I'm so happy to be presenting this volunteer award to Joan Kuryansky. Joan is a longtime volunteer who brings broad expertise in women's human rights, leadership development, law, and community organizing. Joan is also an effective and passionate advocate for human rights, something that was immediately clear to me when I first met her in 2015, when she participated in our inaugural UN study advocacy trip. We've been lucky to have Joan with us at the UN in Geneva several times since then, and she's helped us to train new volunteers and lobby countless Human Rights Council delegates to recommend changes to laws and policies around the world. Joan has jumped in to take the lead on multiple research projects and reports to UN bodies. Most recently, Joan has joined our efforts to counter the backlash against women's rights and LGBTI rights in the Central and Eastern Europe and former Soviet Union region. She volunteered as a facilitator for a convening of human rights defenders in Croatia last summer. We are grateful to Joan for her enthusiasm and dedication to human rights and for sharing her many talents with the advocates.
My name is Sarah Brennes. I'm the director of the Refugee and Immigrant Program at the Advocates for Human Rights. It's my great pleasure to present a volunteer award to Omano Dube. For over a decade, Omano has partnered with the Advocates for Human Rights to advocate for the Oromo community living here in Minnesota. While serving as the executive director of the Oromo community of Minnesota, Omano partnered with volunteers of the Advocates to document human rights abuses that were experienced by the Oromo while living in Ethiopia as part of our report, Human Rights in Ethiopia Through the Eyes of the Oromo Diaspora. More recently, Omano has referred hundreds of Oromo clients for legal services in their asylum claims. As a community leader currently serving as a director at the Brian Coyle Center, he's involved in resettling immigrants who are in transition to their new homes and communities here in Minnesota. So on a day-to-day basis, he is being approached by members of the Oromo community who are looking to be connected with resources, but his work doesn't stop by making a referral. Omano offers ongoing assistance with interpretation, transportation, as well as tapping into his knowledge of the human rights situation in Ethiopia. We are extremely grateful for the incredible contributions that you make to the human rights movement, and congratulations on your volunteer award this year.
My name is Rosalind Park, and I am the director of the Women's Human Rights Program. It is an honor to give our 2020 Women's Program Volunteer Award to Veronica Clark. Veronica wears many hats: retail owner of Dinolo, feminist, racial justice advocate, and of course, friend of the Advocates for Human Rights. I first met Veronica at Roger Gunvor Smith's production of Rodney King. I knew she was passionate about racial equality, but I didn't realize then just how deep her commitment to human rights ran. Since then, Veronica has been an absolute road warrior for us. She traveled with us to the UN and Geneva to advocate on global human rights issues. She came to Malta to help us forge connections with women's human rights defenders from around the world. And then she met us in Western Europe to research the backlash against human rights under very onerous conditions. Throughout all of this, Veronica has helped us research the global threats to women's rights, LGBTI rights, the rule of law, and the safety of human rights defenders. Each of these tasks demands perseverance, hard work, resilience, and agility. It is an honor to present our 2020 Women's Human Rights Volunteer Award to Veronica Clark. She is intrepid, she is dedicated, and above all, she is an advocate for women's human rights. Veronica, thank you for all you do and your commitment to making this world a better, safer place.
When I started at the Advocates and was concerned about the stack of addresses that needed to be updated in the database, the mailings that had to go out that day, and a myriad of other things that had to be accomplished, I was told, "Don't worry, Elise is coming in today. Everything will be done." And it happened just like that. Elise Overman began as an intern with the Advocates in 2018 and has continued to work with us ever since. She has been part of every single fundraising event and development effort. She's amazing, and we so appreciate her positive can-do attitude, her skills, her smile, and her dedication. Last fall, we asked our development interns to create an Instagram story to go along with our Gift to the Max Day campaign. The result was incredible. Under Elise's leadership, they made banners and signs and took photos for posts. They created boomerangs and other videos. They posted what they were doing in the office. And by posting on their social media and taking over the Advocates Instagram account, they introduced the next generation to the human rights movement, and the Advocates gained 60 new followers. Thank you, Elise, for your continued involvement in our work, and I'm honored to present this volunteer award to you.
Добрый вечер. Good evening. I'm Amy Berquist, Senior Staff Attorney with the International Justice Program. The Moscow Community Center for LGBT+ Initiatives has rightly received international accolades for its life-saving work evacuating people from Chechnya. But in its 5 years of existence, it has done so much more to promote human rights in increasingly challenging circumstances. Within days of receiving word of the first evacuation, MCC signed a lease for a building that quickly became a full-service shelter, providing safe harbor for dozens of people fleeing persecution in Chechnya based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. And central to its mission, MCC has built a growing and fierce community of LGBTQ folks who come to the center for everything from clothing swaps, to choir rehearsals, to computer programming lessons, to classes in conversational Hebrew, not to mention the annual Open Art Festival. During our peer-to-peer partnership over the last 3 years, MCC has inspired us and guided us to better serve our own LGBTQ clients. We're thrilled to give our 2020 Special Recognition Award to the Moscow Community Center for LGBT+ Initiatives. Мы благодарны за наше сотрудничество с МКЦ. Для нас большая честь вручить эту награду Московскому комьюнити-центру для ЛГБТ+ инициатив. Поздравляем!
I am thrilled to present the first ever Marlene Kaiser Volunteer Award to Cathy Lenz Meyer. The award was created as a legacy to Marlene and honors individuals who represent the gold standard of excellence in volunteerism, philanthropy, and advocacy. We know no better person than Cathy to give the honor of the inaugural award. Like Marlene, Cathy has the unique combination of grace, generosity, persistence, intelligence, and commitment. She provides extraordinary support and encouragement to our staff, and she rolls up her sleeves to work in the trenches with staff and volunteers. Cathy's list of accomplishments and contributions is long. She has been involved with the Advocates School in Nepal for many years. She traveled to Nepal on multiple occasions and encouraged both students and teachers with her positive energy and commitment to their success. After the earthquakes in 2015, Cathy and her husband Alan stepped forward to fund a new school building, knowing that launching a fundraising campaign could delay progress for our students. Cathy served on the Advocates Board for 9 years. During that time, she consistently modeled effective board service and inspired others to become part of the Advocates. She assisted with growing the organization and building the capacity to sustain that growth. Cathy has been an ambassador for the Advocates mission in Minnesota and overseas, and she embodies our goal to change the world for good. We are grateful for her incredible contributions to the human rights movement.
Thank you, Robin, for that wonderful introduction. You know, over 10 years ago, Marlene Kaiser introduced me to the Advocates for Human Rights. She spoke of their mission and how rewarding it was for her to be part of the organization. Marlene was a champion for human rights early in her life and only grew stronger, more committed, and effective in her dedication. She was such a strong force in this organization. She had sent me information at the time, and I had heightened interest about the school they supported in Nepal, a country I had visited numerous times. I'm honored and humbled to receive this award in Marlene's name. She saw injustices and she acted with courage, confidence, and resourcefulness. I too have been rewarded for being a part of the Advocates for Human Rights. I wish everyone here or wherever you are could experience a trip to the school in Nepal. The success of the school and the beauty of the children is so uplifting. I've witnessed the dedication of the staff, board, and volunteers of the Advocates in their commitment to changing the world for good, locally, nationally, and globally. Change is possible, not easy or immediate, but it is possible, and I know the Advocates will not let up on their mission to see all people receive basic human rights. Thank you.
I am honored to present the 2020 Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award to Lee Gallant, Deputy Director of the ACLU's Human Rights Project. On behalf of the board and staff at the Advocates for Human Rights, I thank you for all you do to protect human rights here in the United States, Lee. Through the power of the courts, you demand accountability when human beings are being treated inhumanely, or when the unalienable rights of people are dismissed because of their immigration status. You serve as a beacon of hope for those whose rights are violated, and as a torchbearer for those of us who walk with asylum seekers, detained immigrants, and refugees. Thank you, Lee. I have worked as an immigration lawyer almost all my professional life, and you are one of my personal heroes. Despite our country's self-heralded identity as a land of immigrants, immigrants have been forced to live with many troublesome policies and laws over the decades, but never have I seen the complete disregard for the humanity of human beings that we now witness daily at the border, in the tent cities for families, including children, the Border Patrol stations and detention centers. Lee, You challenge the administration's practices of separating immigrant families, shooting at people across the border, at children, banning people from certain countries or who practice certain religions to travel to the United States, or deporting immigrants who will most certainly face persecution and torture on account of their gender or religion when returned to their countries of origin. Lee, you have the courage to stand up to the governments and institutions and remind them that we are all subject to the rule of law, that we are all responsible to protect fundamental human rights, to live with dignity, freedom, equality, justice, and peace. Lee, for all you do to protect and promote human rights, I present the Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award to you. And because you can't be here in Minneapolis to receive it, the Advocates Board has deputized your son, Cal, to present it to you on our behalf.
Hi, I'm Cal, Lee's son. We're all very proud of the work he's been doing. So here's the 2020 Human Rights Award.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that generous introduction, and Robin, all you do, and everybody at the organization. I'm extremely flattered and honored to receive this award, but it's particularly gratifying to get an award from an organization that's been in the trenches fighting for so long. So I am sorry I can't be there with everyone, but I am just really honored beyond belief to receive this award. As Sam said, this is a tough time for immigrants. I've been doing this work for more than 25 years, and needless to say, this has been the worst period in those 25 years. The family separation policy has been the worst thing I've seen. The administration has enacted one policy after another to try and ban asylum seekers on the southern border. There's been an attempt to take away due process even for immigrants in the interior of the country, what's called expanded expedited removal. Of course, there's the attempt to take away DACA. There has been elimination of benefits. It's just been one thing after another, and not just the policies, but of course the rhetoric, the attempt to demonize the immigrant communities. And now with COVID, you see the administration using COVID as a pretext to try and enact many of the policies that they weren't able to push forward beforehand. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the family separation practice. As I said, it's far and away the worst thing that I have seen in the years that I've been working on this. As I think most people know, it began in the fall of 2017. We ultimately brought a lawsuit. We thought maybe there were a couple of hundred children who had been separated from their parents when we brought the lawsuit. It now turns out the latest tally is that there have been more than 5,500 children taken from their families. Many of them, hundreds, are just babies or toddlers, some as old as 5 months, 6 months. And unfortunately, we still haven't found many of the families. A lot of the families were not, when we originally brought the lawsuit, the court ordered the government to tell us about all the families that had been separated. The government told us about 3,000 of them, which was far and away beyond what we had expected. But then it later came out through government internal reports that there were almost 2,000 more that had been separated that we didn't know about. And so we only found out about those relatively recently. We are now still searching for those families because they were separated so long ago. The phone information we have for them is largely stale and useless. And so we had to search on the ground in Central America, door to door, looking for those families with our NGO partners. And unfortunately, because of COVID, that search has had to be put on hold. Some of those children were a year old when they were separated, and so now they've been separated for 2/3 of their life, and who knows how long more it is before we find them. So it's been a horrific situation, but the numbers only tell, I think, one part of the story. You know, the 5,500 is mind-boggling, but again, it's, you know, as anybody who does this work or just thinks about it for a second knows that behind each of the numbers is an actual family, a parent and a child. And it's been the human stories that have been so horrific. I remember in the very beginning of the case talking to a mother who got her 4-year-old son back. They were one of the first families we were able to reunite. And the mother said that the 4-year-old just keeps asking her, are men going to come in the middle of the night again and take me away again? You know, and that's what the medical professionals told us. We understood intellectually, but just seeing it there firsthand, the kind of vulnerability and trauma that it set in with these children, how fearful they were that they were going to be taken away in the middle of the night. Another family from Honduras had a 4-year-old boy who needed glasses, and the family was modest means, and they were able to scrape together the money to buy him a pair of glasses, and fortunately were able to also buy him a glasses case. And the glasses case became the biggest thing in their life because they knew that if the glasses broke, it would be difficult for them to find the money to buy a second pair. When they came to take away the 4-year-old boy, he was fortunately wearing his glasses, but he didn't have his glasses cases with him. They didn't let him go back and get his glasses case. So all the mother thought about day in and day out was, can my little boy see? What if his glasses break? Will they get him a new pair? Will they give him a safe place to keep his glasses? And another father told us he had a 7-year-old boy, and all he asked was of the guards, can I at least have a few seconds to brace my son for what's going to happen, that you're going to take him away? They didn't give him the few seconds. They just screamed out, you're coming with us. You know, and the little boy was terrified, being dragged away. There's a story after story of little babies and toddlers being torn from their parents' arms, screaming, sometimes often not even being allowed to say goodbye to their parents, the parents not being able to say goodbye to them, and the parents often just too scared to even ask where their children were going for fear that if they caused any trouble, even asking where their kids were being taken, that their kids would be treated worse. Unfortunately, you know, we are still fighting this and so many other policies that there's been Democratic and Republican administrations, and not everyone agrees with what the ACLU thinks on immigration, and Democratic and Republican administrations haven't always agreed. But I think what we're seeing now goes well beyond any disagreement reasonable people can have about macro immigration policy. I think if there was one silver lining during the family separation crisis that summer of 2018, it's that the public took to the streets and really said, we're not having this. We're not having little babies being taken away from their parents. Laura Bush came out and wrote an op-ed saying, look, my husband was the president, a Republican president, and we had disagreements about immigration policy with the other side, but we don't do this in America. The Pope came out, conservative religious leaders, tens of thousands of people in the street. And so I think that's what it's really going to take. You know, as Sam talked about the courts, as important as that is, and we are fighting every day in the courts, I think any civil rights lawyer will tell you, and any civil rights advocate will tell you that it's really important that people come out, and that's the most important thing, that there be absolute public outcry. So, you know, I urge you all to push back, whether you're a lawyer or not, do that. I mean, obviously, and if you're a lawyer and advocate and can do additional things, that's fantastic. Two things that are maybe more directed at the young people in the audience. One has to do with something that happened to me in literally my first year at the ACLU, but something I think about almost on a monthly basis. In one of my first cases, I got sent down to Texas, and I was, you know, my late 20s, on a big national class action, and I was going to meet with one of the plaintiffs, who was a very young woman from Central America, and the person who was helping me was a grassroots organizer down in Texas, and she was the same age as me, very young, and she brought me to introduce me to the plaintiff, and the three of us sat down, and the grassroots organizer did the talking because my Spanish was not great. And she started by saying to the young woman, Lee is here from New York. He's a muy importante lawyer from Nueva New York. And she went on and we had the conversation. And then afterward, I said very cavalierly to her, the grassroots organizer, you should have said I was a muy importante lawyer. You know, and then she sort of smiled and I went on my way. And about a few weeks later, I started thinking about that encounter, and how she was so much wiser than I was, even though we were the same age, that she understood that this young woman who was in trouble needed to hear that there was somebody important helping her, and that I just didn't fully understand sort of what it meant to this young woman from Central America to have a lawyer helping her, and that this grassroots organizer wanted to start by saying to her, you're not alone. Someone is here to help you from the establishment, and it's going to be on your side. And I think I've thought about that literally every month of my career, how it's very important never to forget how, whether an advocate, non-lawyer, a lawyer, or anybody, just sort of from the establishment, how important it is to make people feel like they're not alone. But I think for you young lawyers, law students, young lawyers starting out, to never forget sort of how important your role can be and how much power you actually have to help people and how much they are looking to you. And the other thing I would just end with, do anything, no matter how small, help one immigrant at one time with anything, or whether it's an immigrant or someone else. I think back on my career, and I've had a lot of sort of higher profile moments and arguments in the Supreme Court and testifying before Congress and those types of things. But when I think about it, it's those sort of little moments of human interaction that will stay with you the rest of your life. And recently before COVID, was in Tijuana, meeting with a father and son who had been separated for 5 months by the Trump administration, and they were finally back together. And I was talking to the father, and we had a long conversation. The little boy, who was 9 years old, was standing next to his father, just listening quietly. And after the father left, the little boy summoned up all his courage and came up to me, put out his hand, and shook my hand and said, I just want to thank you for helping my family. I hope that you can continue to help my family. And I just thought about how much courage that took for a little 9-year-old boy to come up and thank a strange man. And I think that kind of human interaction will stay with you much longer than anything else. So it doesn't matter whether you feel like you're doing the biggest case or you're going to solve every problem. Just try and help one person. If that's all you can do, take one case, or you tutor one kid, or advocate for one person. Anything you can do, you'll feel gratified by it, and it will be critically important in this time for them to get help and to see that there are people trying to help them. So thank you again for this award. I am, as I said, extremely honored to be receiving this award from an organization that has been out there and fighting and in the trenches for so long. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again my extreme pleasure and honor to be here on behalf of the advocates and to participate in this virtual event. As you know, it is my job to raise the money. I am so grateful for the work that the advocates do. I am proud to be part of their mission. I, like many of you, do this gig as my pro bono gift to the advocates. I do it because it is what I can do. I miss seeing all of you and the energy you bring. And even though we are not together physically tonight, I know that together we can raise $100,000. It seems that every year I say, if there's ever a time to support the advocates, it is now. Now more than ever. Well, here I am again. And this time I'm saying, if there's ever a time, the time is now. I am asking you to join me and help us make sure that all people enjoy freedom, equality, dignity, justice, and peace. Now, we've already raised about $100,000 from law firms and corporations. Can we match their support tonight? Will you join me in raising $100,000 from individuals tonight? Participation is very simple. All you have to do is text advocates to 243725 and make your gift. Let's get started. Your gift of $10,000 trains partners in fact-finding and implementing human rights standards. Here is an example of the impact of this work.
The Advocates for Human Rights works with our partners in our home community and around the globe to demand public policy that centers human dignity. We were able to bring together hundreds of people in a virtual conference that allowed us to not only learn, but to share and to grieve and to be powerful together. And we do even more. We need human rights centered policy at every step. The Advocates has been able to work deeply on transforming this Minnesota system's response around human trafficking. We have been engaged at every step of the way in creating not only the statutes that align with human rights standards, but the policies and practices that bring those to life so that human beings who encounter those systems are treated with dignity first.
Can you give $10,000 to train more human rights defenders and amplify the impact of the advocates in the world? I know some of you have been able to give $10,000 in the past. Can you do it again tonight? Many of you give $5,000 during our awards dinner. If you are wondering what the impact of your $5,000 gift can have, watch the Advocates work to end violence. Karen and Rick just donated $5,000. Thank you, Karen and Rick. We are so grateful for your dedication to human rights. And Cathy and Alan, thank you. Are you able to join them in improving the lives of women and children around the globe? I admire the Advocates' work with the United Nations. They share their clients' stories about human rights conditions in their own home countries with the UN. Last year, a former client testified with them. It left a lasting impression on the UN members. Listen to Ngasa talk about his experience.
As discussed in the report, minority groups in Ethiopia face barriers to land use. Members of the minority Ogaden community have been subjected to the arbitrary confiscation of land and ethnic persecution since the beginning of Ethiopian rule over the Somali region in 1948. In April 2014 and again in November 2015, the Oromo people launched large-scale protests in opposition to Addis Ababa Master Plan, which intended to forcibly displace the Oromo from their homes in favor of expansion of the territory of the capital city.
I'm asking you to make more opportunities like this possible. The Advocates is hoping to resume its advocacy at the UN in the fall, and we need your gift of $2,500 to make this possible. Can you help? Your gift of $1,000 saves the life of one asylum seeker by providing access to legal representation. And even with all of the executive orders and policy changes that we've seen over the last few years, lawyers working with the Advocates maintain a success rate of over 80% for their clients. That is outstanding, and congratulations. This category is often everybody's favorites. So how many lives can we save tonight? How many $1,000 donations can we make tonight? Here is an example of the impact of this work.
Miguel was a political activist in Venezuela. He was kidnapped by an armed collective of the government because he was protesting against the practices of Nicolás Maduro, the leader of Venezuela. His father-in-law was kidnapped and killed by that same collective. Miguel fled to the United States and was in immigration custody, was transferred to a detention facility in Minnesota, and connected with the Advocates.
Victims of trafficking are very vulnerable, especially during times of economic uncertainty. Many of you heard at the awards dinner last year that trafficking happens right here in our community, and victims of human trafficking are scared to come forward and seek help. We need to train social workers, school administrators, prosecutors, and other agencies to identify possible victims of trafficking. Your gift of $500 supports this effort. Here is one of my favorite requests, and I know for many of you, it's your favorite as well. make a tangible difference in the future of a child who faces the dangers of trafficking, child labor, or child marriage. Pay the annual tuition for one child to attend the Sanku Palabari Community School in Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. Jennifer, tell us what is new at the school.
Sharmila is now an ICU nurse at a hospital in Kathmandu. Parbati is in medical school studying to be a doctor. Sharmila and Parbati show us that a child who can access her right to education can not only break the cycle of poverty in communities like this one in Nepal, but also can make a life-saving difference in her country.
Thank you, Jennifer. All it takes is your gift of $250 to change the life of one child. Please make your gift now by texting advocates to 243725. Last year, I was on the light rail when a uniformed officer from the Department of Homeland Security got on. I felt intimidated, and I'm an American citizen. Imagine how much more frightening that experience might be for a non-citizen. The Advocates educates refugees and immigrants about their rights. Your gift of $100 supports such training. Every gift of any amount makes a big, big difference. Thank you very much for changing the world for good with your generous contributions tonight. We so appreciate your continued unwavering support of the Advocates. And if you want to give from a donor-advised fund and need help, simply call or email Tekla.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we recognize the work of Lee, the Advocates volunteers, and the hardworking staff at the Advocates. As a board member and volunteer, I am filled with gratitude for them and for each of you. Your contributions and gifts to the Advocates are so important. 3 weeks after the death of George Floyd, our human rights work continues with a renewed sense of purpose. We hope that you will commit to using your time, money, and your voices to do all the good you can for all the people you can, in all the ways you can, for as long as you can. Together, let us all transform Minneapolis and St. Paul, our country, and the world to a place where every person lives with dignity, justice, and peace.